and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Today is June 15th, 2016. And today we're going to talk about how gold, actually today is June 16th, 2018. We're going to talk about how gold and silver streams distort the price of precious metals and miner valuations. It's a topic that came up, and I think it has, I wouldn't say a major influence on the price of silver. It probably has a bigger influence, though, on the price of silver and gold mining companies. We're going to get into that. That is the topic for this evening. Now, we know that gold and silver closed yesterday down much lower, and silver got especially hit, falling just about 3.5%, and gold fell almost 2% on Friday. As you know, the crypto trading continues 24/7 across all the exchanges, and Litecoin, Bitcoin, and Ethereum are all up as we speak. That's always subject to change. You can see price movements of 5–10% within minutes. That is not uncommon in cryptocurrency trading. Now with Smaulgld, Veronica is up. Veronica is up on both BitChute and YouTube. For those of you not familiar with Veronica, it's when I go through some of the more ridiculous things that happened during the week with some commentary. We think, uh-oh, we got a moron here. Coming up tomorrow, we have, in case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the week ended. That's the week in review. Cover all the major gold, silver, cryptocurrency stories, economics, and some of the politics, because the politics does have an impact on what happens with the precious metals prices. We'll also be having, during the week, we should get to the Indian gold, Indian silver imports. Also, Russia will be reporting its gold reserves for the month of May. So please check that out. And also, what's interesting, I'm going to compare Russian gold holdings to their now U.S. Treasury holdings. They have decreased their U.S. Treasury holdings in a big way in April. The U.S. Treasury reports on the holdings of the foreign countries and the U.S. Treasuries that they hold a bit late, but so they just reported April's, even though it's mid-June. But Russia were reporting its May gold reserves this week, so they're about 1 month behind the reporting on the U.S. Treasuries. Now, that's the first time that we've seen Russia take a big drop in U.S. Treasury since January 2016. There's really no reason for Russia to hold U.S. Treasuries in the traditional sense that they need them to buy oil for many reasons. They don't need to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. They don't need to buy oil from the United States. They are a major oil producer themselves. Also, they conduct very little trade with the U.S., so there's really no reason why they should have U.S. dollars. Also, the United States is constantly putting sanctions on them, so that's another reason why they should have U.S. trades. It's amazing they have what they've had, and they've fluctuated between $60 and $120 billion worth of U.S. Treasuries for the past 5–6 years. They were up at $100 billion in around March and February and earlier this year. But in April, they dropped down to $48 billion. So we'll see where they go. The thing about U.S. Treasuries is they don't have to hold them, but they are a good asset for a prudent central bank to hold. You may think that sounds odd with all the debt that the U.S. has. But if you think of all the other assets you could possibly own other than gold, they're all in the form of sovereign issued debt securities, of which none of them really have the ability in the actual to pay back, except that people trust and accept the U.S. Treasury. So that's why countries hold them. Now let's get into tonight's topic, how gold and silver streamers distort the price of precious metals and miner valuations. First of all, we need to know what a silver streamer is. Well, a silver streamer or gold streamer is what they call a royalty company. And what they do is they go around to miners and they offer them financing. And in exchange for that financing, they will receive a stream of that miner's gold or silver production. So oftentimes you'll see what they call the gold equivalent or silver equivalent. That's just the way they account for it. So let's say a company is pretty much a gold company, either a gold miner or a gold streamer, and the bulk of their revenues and the bulk of their production comes from gold. If they also produce silver or stream silver, they will calculate the value of that silver and make it a gold equivalent. And the reverse is true for silver. So you'll see a silver mining company may also mine some gold, but add that gold in and call it silver equivalent, and the streamers do the same. So what a streamer does is it goes around and it offers financing to gold and silver mining companies, and they could be either in production or they could be financing them so that they get to production. Now, before we get into their impact, what I want to do is just go through some of the numbers of a particular gold streamer. And this is an advertisement. This isn't paid for. This is not investment advice. I'm just using Royal Gold as an example of a gold streamer and how they operate. There are other ones. They're all pretty much similar in the way they operate, meaning that they go out and they get financing, and then they contact silver or gold miners, and then they make contracts to receive a portion of their production. And it's all based on the type of deal that they can strike. So the good streamers, the good royalty companies will have good deals, good companies, or they'll get lucky. And then the companies that don't do as well will be because they haven't picked the right mines, they haven't negotiated the right contract. So a silver streamer or a gold streamer or any streaming royalty company is only as good as its management and its business development people. All right, so let's take a look at Royal Gold. And this is quite eye-opening if you look at the price action of the silver streamers. So in January 2016, the price of Royal Gold was $29.79. On the Friday's close on the 14th, it closed at $92.44. Now, if you remember, January 2016 or late 2015, that was the low for both gold and silver in the recent cycle. That means that Royal Gold rose 211% from the beginning of January 2016 through the middle of June 2018. Now, the other streamers have also done similar price performance. I'm only picking Royal Gold, but Franco-Nevada is one, Wheaton Silver, Sandstrom. These are all examples of streaming companies, and they all operate on the same basis, but they all have different deals, and some focus more on silver, some focus more on gold. Royal Gold focuses, as its name would indicate, more on gold. I think 85% is gold, 8% is silver. They have a copper stream and 2% other. Now, the largest gold mining company in the world, and some consider it the most efficient, it's got great properties around the world, is Barrick's. Now, Barrick's in January 2016 at a price of $9.91, and as the close on Friday on 6/14 closed at $12.82, a nice 29.2% gain. But nothing compared to the 211% gain of Royal Gold, and you have to ask why. Well, if Barrick's rose 29%, that's not bad. That's very good to grow in that amount in basically 2.5 years. It's a very solid double-digit return each year. It more than tracks the price of gold and silver, and Barrick's is considered to be a very well-run gold company. Here's where it gets interesting. I mentioned that the streamers arranged to pay the miners a certain amount for their production. Well, the amount that they pay is shocking. And they actually are taking it, well, I wouldn't say they're taking advantage, they are taking advantage of the miners because they're providing them finance that they might not be able to get otherwise. The average price that it cost Barracks to get an ounce of gold out of the ground in 2017, according to their annual report, was $750. So you can see, if Barracks is good enough to get gold out of the ground at $750, after all their costs, their operating costs, their employee costs, their managing costs, legal costs, lease costs, whatever it is, they managed to throw off a nice profit because the price of gold is $1,200, $1,300. So that's a very tidy gross margin. You've got $1,200, $1,300, and you're paying, and it's costing you a $750. So your gross margin is $550 on that ounce, and that's a nice 73% gross margin. And then after all your costs, they make a decent profit and they can pay a dividend. Royal Gold, or any of the streamers, they have dramatically lower cost of production numbers for a few reasons. And let me explain what that is. Their average deal with gold miners gives them a average price per ounce of $319 per ounce. That means that their deals give them gold at $319 an ounce, which means instead of a 73% operating margin, they have a 300% operating margin. So, and the reason for that is twofold. One, it's obvious, they have a lower price. They have about less than half the cost of gold production. So they're entitled to receive gold at $320 an ounce, and Barracks has to sweat and produce gold at $750 an ounce, and they have to incur costs in order to do it. Even more interesting is Barracks has 18,421 employees, and those employees are spread out across mines in the US, Canada, Australia, Peru, Argentina, Dominican Republic, Papua New Guinea, Tanzania, Zambia, Saudi Arabia. So Barracks has a massive operation, nearly 20,000 employees. They must have legal costs like you can't believe for compliance all over the world. They have to have an infrastructure. They have to have a tech system. They have to know what's going on in all the countries. Their accounting must be a tremendous amount of work just put together with lawyers and accountants just to figure out what they did in a given quarter all across the world. And yet, you have to admire what they've done. Any of these large gold mining companies really have a rough time because they have to deal with strikes, they have to deal with environmental things, they have to deal with allocating money towards research and finding where they might make their next strike. They have to allocate to make sure they're hitting the right veins. They have to keep the production levels high. It's a lot of work. In contrast, we mentioned the 18,421 employees that Barracks has. Anyone want to guess in the comments section how many employees that Royal Gold has? We'll give that a minute, and then we're going to disclose how many employees Royal Gold has. And let me give you some impact of the size. Royal Gold will produce about 250,000 ounces of gold a year. Now that's not equal to the 5 million ounces that Barracks will produce, but that's a significant amount of gold, but they don't produce anything. They just have a contract for it. So in their most recent quarter, I think they had about 60,000 gold equivalents that they were able to sell at the current market prices, and they had about 14,000 ounces that they were holding in inventory. So their game is a bit of, if the gold comes in, they sell it, or they can hold it, they can arbitrage it. Well, no one wants to guess, so I'm going to guess. Well, I'm going to tell you. They have 23 employees. So not only do they get their gold for $319 an ounce, they also only have 23 employees. So you can see these companies have a major advantage over the gold mining companies. Now, the disadvantage is they can't exist without the gold and silver mining companies. But there's an issue with them, though. It's not all golden for Royal Gold or any streamer, because they have to be concerned that the health of the mining industry is there, because without the mining industry, all they've got are 23 employees who negotiate these contracts and figure out when to sell it and how to account for everything that they do. But if there's a decline in the price of gold or silver or copper, whatever they're streaming, and let's say the miner decides, well, screw this, I'm not doing anything. They can't make them mine it, so they may not have any revenues coming from a particular mine. A mine may go out of business and they don't get anything. Now, it's actually worse, though, to be holding, if you think about it, it's worse to be holding a miner if it goes out of business, then your investment goes to zero. So let's say you hold Joe Smith's mining company, it's doing well, for whatever reason hits a snag, losing money, can't make money. Maybe one of the reasons it can't make money is it has to hand over its gold to Royal Gold at $319 an ounce, and it just can't make it. It goes out of business. Your investment goes to zero. Now, if you held Royal Gold, that company would go out of business, and Royal Gold would suffer because they would not get the benefit of that stream. But the big problem with Royal Gold or any of these streaming companies is they basically don't have anything other than a contractual right to receive the gold. They don't own the property, but you could also consider that an advantage. They don't own the properties. They really don't have any input into what happens at the mine. They just have contracts that allow them to get the gold and silver at lower prices. But of course, if those streams that they have, the companies that they buy into don't produce for whatever reason, they go out of business, they don't know what they're doing, they lose too. But again, they don't lose to the same level that the actual mine would. So it's pretty obvious why the streamers have done better than the particular gold and silver miners, because they have a lower cost of production, dramatically lower, half the price of Barracks. And Barracks is one of the top gold producers, but with also getting gold at $750 an ounce. That's quite an achievement. Without lifting a finger, without doing any work, Royal Gold gets it at $319 an ounce. So, and they only have 23 employees, so they don't have the expenses. Now, the question is that someone asked me, someone was saying the reason for the reason miners were struggling is they have cost. It's hard to get mining costs. There's the idea of peak gold. There's a lot of reasons why you would think that gold miners are having difficulty, but no one's ever really mentioned the advent of these streaming companies. These streaming companies, I think, because now they're large, you've got any number of them, Sandstrom, Royal Gold, Wheaton, Franco-Nevada, it's another one that the Swiss National Bank is invested in. If they're actually providing finance at not traditional, so let's say I am Joe Miner and I need capital to continue my operations. I've already proven that I can get gold out of the ground, but I need new equipment. I need to develop another mine that's only half development that had been mothballed. So I need to raise $20 million. But the market isn't very good. I can't do an equity offering. No one wants to buy the shares. They're depressed. No one wants to lend money, because lending money to a mining company is risky. You can lend them money. You might be able to, or someone might want to lend you money, but they may want you to pay 11, 12%, and that defeats the purpose. You might as well go bankrupt. So the streamers come along, and they're heavily capitalized, and they say, well, I'll lend you the money. They'll lend the money to me, and the exchange is I get a portion of their gold or silver, whatever it is, at a steeply reduced price. It's a good deal for me. I get to continue the production, and I figure if I can really knock it out of the park on the rest of the mine and the part that I don't owe them, and the price of gold or silver goes higher, I'll do well. So I'll pull into this deal, and it'll be fine. But here's the problem with that. If streamers didn't exist, now, and if the company does well, the streamer is the one who's going to benefit the most because he's now negotiated for a big piece of gold production at $319 an ounce. So if there weren't streamers, and let's say Joe Miner couldn't raise equity, couldn't borrow money, what would happen to the miner? Well, that mine would either mothball, shut down, or go bankrupt. Now, if they mothball or shut down, which means they're not going to be producing any gold or silver. If they go bankrupt, they're not going to be producing any gold and silver, and probably, unlike when they mothball, they probably never will. At least until somebody decides that they want to try to make a go at a mine that couldn't do it. In other words, a large company would come in and decide they're going to buy the mine, they're going to buy the property, and they're going to try to make it work. Well, that's probably unlikely. So if the miners didn't have the streamers, they probably would go out of business. You can say, well, that's good for the miners, but it's actually bad for the miners, and it's bad for the price of gold, and here's why. The miners would normally rise with the price of gold and silver. You would expect that. In fact, one of the advantages of buying gold miners as an investment as opposed to physical gold or silver as an asset is that when the price of gold or silver rises, you get leverage on the miners. So if the miner is producing, if you buy gold at $1,200 and it goes to $1,300, you made $100. But a miner who has costs and can get it like Barrett's at $750 and it goes to $1,200 and then it goes to $1,300, they're getting the difference between $750 and $1,200, $750 and $1,300, $750 and $1,400, $750 and $1,500. Whereas you're only getting $1,200 to $1,300, $1,200 to $1,400, $1,200 to $1,500. So the miners would normally capture that. But what the streaming deal does is it says you're not going to, because even though the price of gold is going from $1,200 to $1,300 to $1,400 to $1,500, you're giving it to the streamer for $319 an ounce. So you don't capture that benefit. So the miner is not going to benefit from the price rise in gold or silver. But the streamer is going to make big time money because he's locked in at $319. He's only got 23 employees. So that's why these streaming companies do extremely well. The only thing that can really knock them off their perch is the fact that they don't own anything. And if the miners go under, they're absolutely worthless too because they won't have any miners working for them streaming their stuff. However, if that really is the case, then everyone is screwed. So it's almost like they have a built-in protection that even if they can't get the streams from the companies, they don't have the bankruptcy costs really because they just pay out the 23 employees, they close up shop, and then they're done. It's the miners that are stuck with the environmental liabilities and all the employee issues. You can't just fire 18,000 employees if Barrick's wanting to go out of business. There's severance costs, especially in different jurisdictions. You can have riots, civil unrest. I mean, there's cases of gold mining executives being held hostage. It's quite a different and much more risk and less reward to be running a gold mining company than it is to be running one of these streamers like Sandstrom. Now, how does this affect the price of gold? We've seen how it affects the price of the miners. If they've taken a portion of their stream offline where they're not going to get the benefit of the increased price, well, that means that the investors are looking at that company and realizing that a good portion of their gold and silver they're actually producing at a loss, and that's what they did to exchange to get financing. How does that impact the price of gold and silver? Well, I was thinking about this as well. If normal circumstances would say if a miner can't make money or a miner needs finances and can't get it, well, then they would either shut down or go out of business or go bankrupt. And if that happened, you would have less gold and silver supply. It's pretty simple. If mines can't make money, mines can't have access to financing, they stop producing. And when they stop producing, you have a dip in supply. What the streamers have done, in effect, has ensured that these miners will continue to produce. The other thing that they do is on the developmental side. If you think about it, if you're not making any money as a miner, why would anybody even do exploration? Well, under the streaming contracts, this is where the streamers have to be careful, but they can really hit a big home run. They can negotiate with a junior miner, one that's not even in production. They can loan them money and say $180 an ounce if you find anything. So they actually keep the production going by this creative financing that the streamers provide. Now, they're pretty well capitalized. I think Royal Gold might have $100 billion in cash right now. But they don't have any operating costs. I mean, they have operating costs, but they don't have significant operating costs. So that money is there to go out and find good deals. And they don't have to use the money, but the idea is you have good management. You will allocate your capital towards revenue producing deals. And that's what these streaming companies do. So I think they have an impact on the price of the miners, in that the miners, many of them have these streaming deals. I mean, First Majestic recently bought a company and it had a streaming deal in it. And I think someone have to look at this, but this is typical of any deal. I don't need to know the specifics of this one. But I think what happened was when they bought the company, they had to get out of the streaming deal because I think First Majestic didn't want to buy the mine if they had to then run the mine and then give the silver to Franco-Nevada for $7 or $6 an ounce. So I think it's part and parcel of that deal. They renegotiated that. Now, if that's not true in that deal, that definitely happens, that circumstance, because junior miners, the less leverage you have where you need financing, the more likely you're going to get a knock on the door from a streamer who's going to, well, he's not taking advantage of you. I mean, you could say no, you could go out of business. They offer a lifeline, and you could be a very good partner with a streamer. I don't think they look at them, the miners, as them taking advantage of them, but they're certainly got leverage over them in many instances. But again, it's a voluntary deal. It seems to work for both, but I think it does have an impact on mining prices, certain miners that have these streaming deals. And I think that's one thing to look at when you are going to invest in a miner. I mean, this isn't investment advice, but look at the miners' cost per, don't just look at their cost per ounce of production, but look to see, well, you might look at a miner and say, oh, $700 an ounce gold, that's great. $9 an ounce silver, that's great. But then you find out that half their production is agreed to be sold to Franco-Nevada for $600 an ounce for gold, or $400 an ounce, and $4 for silver. So I think that that's a very important component now, and it doesn't exist. These companies are relatively new, Franco-Nevada, Sandstrom, and so on, Royal Gold, because they have significant portions now in many of the miners. And as I say, I think it impacts the price because they keep certain mines operational, which brings on more supply, and they also help with development costs, which these companies would otherwise not be able to do developmental work and research. So that's my view on the mining and the streamers. I do think they have an impact. How much of an impact, I'm not sure, but they have to have some impact. And what's interesting is that these streamers actually have way outperformed the miners. And that's another thing that's possible. Maybe a lot of investment capital, people looking to deploy capital, big money, as they say, They look at miners and they look at the streamers and they look at the past performance. Then they look at the cost that they have average price for gold and silver. They see it's half of a regular miner. And then they see they don't have the associated costs, like for employees, and they don't have to own a mine. They don't have to do a lot of stuff. Now, tricky guy. Given the utter depravity constantly being revealed in the news, how much can we believe in an entity spins a narrative? You say we got to go with what we have, but is it, say, 30% false hype? Not quite sure how to answer that. I was thinking about the streamers and mining shares. Were you thinking specifically about that, tricky guy, or are you just talking in general about the utter depravity constantly being revealed in the news? I was trying to analyze specifically why gold and silver miners and prices might somewhat be held back by the streamers. Are you talking about that, or are you just talking about in general? Yes, but generally mostly. All right, well, we'll get off of the topic then of silver streaming and miners. I think every entity spins a narrative. I think every entity, any point of view, sells a narrative. And as a result, I believe that those entities play fast and loose with the truth. They invent facts. They deny facts. And I think you have to be careful. And you know I say this all the time. You've got the gold pumpers. You have the silver pumpers. You have the Bitcoin pumpers. You have the Litecoin pumpers. You have the Democrats, you have the Republicans, you have CNN, you have Fox. They're all pumping a narrative. And unfortunately, people latch on to what they want to believe. So if you have silver, you get a silver pumper on the line, you're just going to listen to them and hope and pray and just believe everything that they say because they're good guys. They like silver. You like silver. You're like them. They're like you. And it's the same with people who watch MSNBC, people who watch Fox. They trust those people. Why? Because they're saying what they want to hear. And that is where Smaulgld, I believe, is a lot different. I try to be objective. I am for the precious metals. I am for some of the cryptocurrencies. But I'm not for pumping them. I'm not for making up stories about them. And that some people, yourself included, I think, gets people annoyed. They'd rather hear Lambo and Bitcoin to the moon and silver set to skyrocket and gold set to launch. But those are also examples. Those are also examples of depravity too, tricky guy. I've just put off such low integrity bounds. Who has the time to gather clarity due to all the spin? Answer, Lou. Well, I try to. And I really don't have an objective. I don't make any money doing this. I don't take on many of the channels. You don't know this, but they take on paid CEOs. They get paid guests, and they make money touting. And they don't tell you touting. I tell you what I make money on. You can donate. You can buy the precious metals from the site. And that's about it. But I don't even make the money to pay for the hosting fees. I have a few people who send me, Tricky Guy does, but that's about it. So there's no money in this. The reason I do it is because, like Tricky Guy, I am put off by what I see in not just precious metals pumping and crypto pumping, but in politics and in everything. Look at the recent IG report. That was a narrative spun. They made black white. The guy, Horowitz, for 550 pages goes off on how all this evidence of bias, and then says, but there's no bias and there was no evidence of bias. I mean, you can't be more depraved than that. To say black is white and white is black, and it permeates everything. And I don't really know if there's an honest channel out there that delivers the news. They're all narrative pushers. And I think it's the same with most gold and silver channels. They're just out there cheerleading silver and gold. And it's mindless because when they don't go up after years of prediction, and they still have people listening saying, you'll see, they're just early. That just shows you've joined a cult. You want to believe that. There's no empirical evidence to believe that they're headed higher, or set to skyrocket, or set to launch. What I like the best is the people that are most knowledgeable, the people that have studied precious metals and will show you that when silver is going to get smashed, when gold is going to get smashed, why there's manipulation, and yet they still tell you buy gold and silver when they themselves tell you it's manipulated. And they keep saying, well, they're going to lose control. Elites are losing control. Bankers are desperate. No, they're not. What makes you think they're desperate and losing control other than you want them to? Well, eventually, it's not sustainable. Well, that means you can collect subscription fees. You just keep saying it. Every year that the price doesn't rise, you keep telling them it's unsustainable. And we all know it's mathematically impossible for this to continue. Well, you don't know that. You don't know what the math equation is, how long it can go on. But you do know if you keep telling people that, they'll keep coming back. Sal may be fully honest, but Sal talks like a pirate. I want to express a multitude of gratitude to everyone here on the channel. No, Sal is an honest man. He tried to do an impersonation of your impersonation. Well, that's hard to do. I mean, it's hard to do an impersonation in the first place. But no, I think Sal gives good information. I don't think Sal has an agenda. Yeah, he's one of the channels that I follow. I like what I don't do enough of, because it's just not. I'm interested in the stories when I'm not a good storyteller, but I like when the stories come along and Sal shows them to us. And I also like that he shows the precious metals. I don't have all those different coins and things to show, so I really do appreciate his channel. But his channel isn't about trying to sell you anything. He's not there to tell you it's going to skyrocket or go higher. I don't know if he's there. He'd jump right in. You know what he did last night? He live streamed our stream with Philip Kennedy, which is quite interesting. Looks like the riggers will allow a dead cat bounce, and yeah, well, that's what happens. And then you have to ask a multitude of gratitude, miser. Looks like the riggers will allow a dead. Yeah, that's what happens historically, and it's been happening since 1975, since they introduced the COMEX. It's the nature of the game. It's designed from the beginning to discourage hoarding. Why? Because they need, for whatever reason that they need, tell them to invade now. We're just about done here, unless there's more questions. I try to keep it, well, it's 38 minutes. I try to keep it under an hour. You get a much bigger audience after it gets posted. People can come and watch it at their own time. The advantage of the live stream, the reason I do it every night, Tricky, is so people, if they want to ask questions, then they can ask questions. Otherwise, sometimes I wouldn't get to them in the normal course. So, any other question? Who's gold, silver with all those hearts there? Never saw gold. Who is gold, silver? Can we click on that? No, we can't. Miser is here. All right. Well, unless there's any further questions, I think I'm going to call it a night. Remember, the topic was how gold and silver streamers distort the price of precious metals. Minor valuations. I don't think you've seen that analysis anywhere else. Generally, what I do find tricky, guy, is you get one person comes up with some theory, how there's a gold back yuan, or Russia's going to do this, or someone's going to do that, and then every channel just gets out their parrot box and repeats it and gets thousands of views. And people jump from one channel to the other. They see 12 or 13 channels saying the same story. No one questions whether it's true or not. And by then, it's factual because everyone has said it. As you know, I don't do that. But, I wasn't even trying to do Bugs Bunny. Yeah, what's up, Doc? I wasn't trying to do that. I just found myself on the... Thanks, Miser. I wasn't trying to do Bugs Bunny. I just slurred into that by mistake. And I guess it did sound like Bugs Bunny. Duck season! Rabbit season! Remember that one? Duck season, rabbit season, fire. All right. It's not impression night. It's not open like Saturday night. So I'm going to sign off. I want to thank everyone for listening. And tomorrow we will have, I'll do, in case you missed the top gold and silver stories, remember to check out Smaulgld's Moronica. And I will do another podcast or live stream tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. So if you have any questions or topics you want covered, please send them along. Thanks everyone for listening, and I'm going to go over and hit the stop.